So we're in week 3 of our Christmas series. The other day, I went home for just a few minutes. Some stuff was getting delivered. And Lori asked me, my wife, she said, hey, can you come home for a few minutes? I said, sure. So I jetted over to the house. And about the time I pulled in the driveway, the UPS guy, who's not the guy I was coming there making deliveries, but anyway, he sets down 3 boxes in our garage. Our garage door's open. And I noticed the bottom box is a very manly thing. And about that time, my wife comes walking out of the house, and I guess she heard me pull into the driveway, and she goes, you weren't supposed to see that. I said, well, you should have told the UPS guy that. Because at our house, we call UPS guy this time of year Santa Claus. And so she said, so what do you think about that? I was like, I'm not telling you. I'll tell you Christmas morning when I was supposed to get it. So it was sort of, I was expecting to get something, but it was unexpected for me to get it the other day. So she says, do I have to wrap it? And I'm like, yes. It doesn't count if it's not wrapped. So anyway, here's the thing. When Jesus showed up, it was unexpected. I mean, everybody knew that an earthly king was coming, that a man born of a woman was going to crush the head of Satan. We knew that. We knew that he was going to be Jewish. We knew that he was going to be a king. We knew that he was going to have a reign that would be established and would continue and continue and continue. We knew that he would be wounded, but that he would rescue his people. And we knew a king was coming. Thought it was going to be an earthly king, but nobody thought Emmanuel, God with us, that God was coming. God in the bod, Jesus was coming at Christmas. Nobody thought that. It didn't occur to anybody that, no, the king of the universe, because we're going to have an earthly king and Rome is going to be defeated. No, the king of the universe, the one who spoke it into existence, the one who holds our lives together, it says in Colossians chapter 1, every atom of our body held together. He's coming. And so that's what we've been talking about, because that was the unexpected part, right? And so this week, we've been talking about what's Christmas about, really. And it's really about worship. That's what it's about. We realize that God is coming in. We don't go, hey, what can you do for us? Hey, how about fixing my life? How about taking care of everything for me, eliminate every problem? No, how about we worship him? How about we recognize that he is the creator of the universe, that he is able to do anything, and we say, hey, yeah, we're going to worship him. So last week, we talked especially about body language. We didn't talk about this, but in a nutshell, what we said is, listen, our conversation with everybody else, body language is important. When somebody's doing this, they're a little bit animated. When they're doing this, they might be angry or disinterested. They're looking at their watch, looking around the room. They don't want to hear it, right? When they're scratching the side of their head. They're thinking about it. You say, hey, look at me. I'm talking to you. Body language is important in every other relationship that we have, every other conversation. Why do we think it's not important in our relationship with God and our conversations with him that our body language is important? And there's about 150 different postures of worship that you find throughout the Bible. And we said, hey, what if we said we're going to be more expressive outwardly about our worship of the Lord? So we talked about that last week. And this week, we're going to talk about what's really on the inside. And today, we're really going to talk about pouring out your heart to God. Because when you pour out your heart to God, you tell him what's going on. He knows already. But when you pour out your heart to God and invite him into your life, what happens is that he loves that when you do that. When you say, God, I need you. He knows that you need him. But when you say that to him and pour out your heart to him, that is another way to worship. So Matthew chapter 2, verse 1, this is the wise men. They show up and before they've even seen him and they're talking to Herod. It says, now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem saying, where is he who has been born king of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. If you weren't here last week, that word worship in English comes from 2 old English words, worth-ship. So worship is declaring God's worth in your life. How valuable is he to you? Is he this valuable to you or is he this valuable to you? Is he much more than that? How valuable is he to you? And the word that's used there in the Greek is the word proskuneo. And the word proskuneo means to come forward and kiss. As when a king extends his hand and you come, you kneel before the king, take his hand, and you kiss to say that you are showing loyalty and allegiance and honor and worship of that king. And that's what they came to do. It says, we have come to get things from him. No, it says we've come to worship him. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshiped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. We don't know whether they planned to give those to him the whole time or they brought them with them. And they said, this is very valuable, and we're giving these to you. We were going to use these to travel back home with. We don't know, but they were important, they were significant, they were symbolic, and they were sacrificial gifts that they gave to Jesus as part of their worship. They gave the very best that they could. So here's the thing about Christmas. Christmas is a magnifier. A crisis is a magnifier in your life. That's why this year has been difficult for so many of us. A crisis acts as accelerant. A crisis acts as a magnifier, right? So we had the stuff when everything hit in March and April, and then we had difficult days during the summer, and then difficult days during the fall. And now, we're like, hey, what's going on next? And here's Christmas. And Christmas and a crisis serves as magnifiers. Now, here's what I mean by that. If life is great for you right now, it seems like it's even more great than it's ever been. I mean, right now, you're getting the closer and closer you get to Christmas, the more it seems like, wow, God has blessed us, and this is incredible, and everything in my family is great, and I love my marriage. My husband is the best man God ever created, and my wife, I wouldn't take anything in the world for her. I mean, she is absolutely incredible, and I love being around my children, and my job, I wish I could work more because I love it so much. And it just keeps, it just gets better and better and better because it's a magnifier. But on the other hand, maybe your life is just kind of bland right now, right? And it's not really good. It's not really bad. It's just kind of meh. And so everything in your life is even more meh than before. Like, what do I do? I'm just kind of existing. And maybe that's where you feel like life has got you right now. But on the other hand, it can also be a very difficult time for people because if you're feeling lonely, the closer we get to Christmas, potentially the more lonely you'll feel. If you feel like your marriage is like, if your marriage was bad in November, it may be getting worse. If the relationship between you and your kids was like, there's a lot of tension in September and October. Right now, there may be even more. This is the time of year that people say, tell you what, we're going to stay together Christmas. And I tell you what, after that, babe, I'm out of here. I'm done. Can't do this anymore. I can't handle this. Too much. Right? It becomes a magnifier. You get a diagnosis from the doctor that is not your favorite, and it seems even worse than you ever imagined it could be. Right? And so this time of year, there is a lot of, man, this is hard for people. King David, who's a man after God's own heart, about half of the Psalms that he writes are laments or complaints. And lament and complaint are not the same thing, but not all of them are about everything is great. Psalm 142, he says this, he says, I pour out my complaint before him. I tell my trouble before him. When's the last time you complained to God? Just so you know, that's okay. That's allowed. You're not going to get into trouble for complaining to God. You can say, God, I don't like this right now. God, I'm angry. God, I tell you what, I'm frustrated. I've just had it. God, I don't know what to do about this. I keep trying to do the right thing, and every time I do the right thing, it seems like I get in more trouble. I don't like this. God, I'm afraid. God, I tell you what, I really don't want to say this out loud to anybody. I'm not going to say it out loud to you. I'm just going to say it in my mind so you can hear me because I don't even want to say it out loud, but I'm scared. That's okay. You don't have to pretend to God that everything is roses and unicorns for you all the time. You can say, God, I got some complaints. That's okay. He says, I cry to you, O Lord. I say, you are my refuge, my safe place, my portion in the land of the living. Now this refuge, that's a safe place, right? It's a safe place. For when I was a little kid, we had some woods behind our house. I built a fort out in the woods. And so sometimes when I felt a little bit, not so sure what's going to happen, I would go out, or nervous or anxious, whatever, I'd go out there and hang out in my fort. And, and maybe you had a place when you were a child that you went to as a refuge, as a sort of a safe place for you. Maybe you went and hid under your bed. Maybe you had this, you laid on top of your bed, because sometimes little kids think that as long as they're on their bed, they're good. If your arm's like off the bed, then the monster will grab you and pull you under the bed and eat you. So sometimes kids think that, and you have to say, no, it doesn't do that. That's why I duct tape the closet door shut and he's not coming out. Right? Or sometimes what you do is, I don't know, my kids when they were little, random things would scare them in the middle of the night, and they wouldn't come wake us up. We would just wake up the next morning, and there would be one of our kids laying on the floor because they'd gotten scared, thunder, a dog barking, whatever happens in the middle of the night, and they would just get scared and come in there and just like, well, I want to be close to mom and dad. I want to be somewhere close. And so, but refuge is a safe place. And here's what happens for a lot of us who are Christ followers. When we first come to know Christ, we go, oh, here, yeah, take care of everything for me, would you? And then a lot of us, we sort of take some steps back a little bit, and we think we're growing and we're maturing in the Lord, but we say, like, I can handle this. I can take care of this crisis, this stress, this trouble, this heaviness, this depression. I got it. I can handle it. And we just keep backing further and further and further away from God, when he says, look, no, you can throw all your stuff on me. And we think, well, wow, I'm reading my Bible more, and I'm coming to church more, and I give, and we've got all these things. And you think, well, sometimes I just feel like disconnected from God. Well, you know what the old story says is, guess who moved? It wasn't God. Psalm 62 says, trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. God takes care of us. He says, look, I'll be your safe place. He says that he's our defender. He's the captain of the host. He's our provider. He's our protector. He's our helper. He is so many things. And he says, look, I'm safe for you. Why would you want to run away from me? When I was in high school, where I went to high school, it was 10th, 11th, and 12th grade in the school system where I went to high school. And so the sophomores were the low people in the totem pole. So 2 or 3 weeks after I get to high school, I'm this tall. I've been this tall since I was 11 years old. When I was 11 years old, I was 6'3", and when I was 12 years old, I wore size 14 shoes. And everybody thought, he's going to be 6'9". Everybody was wrong. Anyway, all I've done is gotten fat. I was 165 pounds of steel, baby, when I was in high school, and and now I'm about 168, plus another 50 or so. But here's the thing. I was this punk. I was skinny. I was a little nervous. I was sophomore, walking around this big high school, and a little unsure of myself, not sure what's going on, and so I had this guy who was in my chemistry class, and he was a senior, good-looking guy. His arms were about the size of a Toyota. It's huge. And so, we go, so 2 or 3 weeks into school, he comes into the lunchroom. I'm already sitting over in the corner because, if you're going to defend yourself, better be in a corner so you can fight your way out, right? So anyway, I see this guy come in, and he's not looking like he's just won the lottery or something. He looks like he kind of hacked off about something. Gets his tray of food, slams it down on the table, and just sits there. He's just staring. He's just mad as a hornet. And then some other guy comes down, sits down across from him, and he reaches over with his left hand, grabs the front of that guy's shirt, pulls him this way, and goes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Knocked him out. Got up, walked to the office and said, I just knocked out a kid in the cafeteria. I probably need to go home. He was right. He did. So they sent him home for a 3-day vacation. And so he comes back to school, and I'm like, that guy, I ain't messing with him, right? But here's the thing. About a week and a half later, he's sitting beside me in chemistry. I'm just like trying to stay out of arm's reach of him all the time. But he starts thinking I'm kind of funny. And he said, man, let's go do something. Hey, let's go do something Friday night. I'm like, you're a senior. You want to do something with me? You want to hang out with me? And we became good friends. And I loved it because I could walk around campus with him and I could strut a little bit because I was like, to tell you what, you say something to me, he's going to take care of you. Right? And so it was like a refuge, right? And God is our protector. He's your protector of your physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, everything. He's like, I got you. I got you. But sometimes when things are so difficult and you're wondering, how am I going to get through this? And how am I going to survive? And how am I going to live? Those nights when you go to bed and you lay there in bed and you say, Lord, I'm not looking to die, but if I don't wake up tomorrow morning, that's okay with me. Those kind of nights. Those nights where you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't get back to sleep. Or you do really well, you sleep 4 hours and wake up and the first thing that pops in your mind is the crisis, the pressure, the struggle that you're dealing with right now, whether it's your family or work or relationship or the HOA, who knows? And you just don't even want to get out of bed. When it's so bad, just like, if I could just take a nap, I would forget about it for a little while. What do you do? What do you do? Well, the first thing is you remember God's past faithfulness. Remember God's past faithfulness. Remember what he has done for you. See, what we want to do is we want to just sit there and swirl around our little troubles. You say, Art, there's nothing little about it. I know. But I'll tell you in a minute why they're little. But they're little troubles. And they eat us up. They gnaw at us. And we just can't get through it. What do? Remember God's past faithfulness. David writes this in Psalm 42. We think this is when he was having some problems with his son Absalom, and son Absalom had betrayed him. He says, my tears have been my food day and night, while they say to me all the day long, where is your God? Have you had a day like that lately? If you haven't, you probably will have one at some point. Is it gets hard, overwhelming, difficult? He said, well, this is what I do. He says, these things I remember as I pour out my soul. How I would go up the throng and lead them in procession to the house of God with glad shouts and songs of praise, a multitude keeping festival. He said, look, there was a time, like right now, I feel awful. I feel like, God, where are you? And that's one of the things. I've had 5 or 6 people in the last month or so that have talked to me, and they have said, Arthur, I'm real concerned about, is God still around? And I'm like, you're somebody who's ordinarily real faithful. If you're questioning that, that means everybody is questioning that. God hadn't moved. God's still here. And David says, yeah, look, here's the thing. I was leading people in worship, not just a couple people, but throngs. And so he was the worship leader. And he says, and now I don't even know if you're there, God. He says, why are you cast down on my soul? And why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God. He sort of starts preaching to himself a little bit. He remembers God's past faithfulness. He says, for I shall again praise him, my salvation. And Jeremiah says in Lamentations, he says, remember my affliction and my wanderings, the wormwood and the gall. He says, my soul continually remembers it and is bowed down within me. But this I call to mind. I remember what God did for me, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord. This is what he remembers. Steadfast love of the Lord. That's the Hebrew word hana. Grace. The grace of the Lord never ceases. God never goes anywhere. He reminds himself, his mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And then he says, the Lord is my portion. God's enough. Even though everything's falling apart around me, God is enough. The Lord's my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. And so what you do, you remember, you remind yourself of your relationship with God. You remind yourself of God's past faithfulness in your life. So I start preaching to myself a little bit when I get discouraged and run down. I say, hey, you know what? If God had not saved me, I would be in a mess. Not just going to hell. I wouldn't have any purpose. I wouldn't have any peace. I wouldn't have any confidence. I would be trying to do life on my own. I wouldn't have any answers to anything. And where in the world would I be? And I start to remember how God is so faithful to me. The greatest miracle in the history of the world is when God raised Jesus from the dead and gave us eternal life. Second greatest miracle in the history of the world is when I asked my wife Lori to marry me and she said yes. I mean, if you were to see her and me, if you don't know her, you're like, dude, you talk about outkicking your coverage, you did okay. I mean, I see her walk across the room, I go, dang. I mean, that's the reason I call her my short, hot wife. But you know what else? She loves Jesus. She prays with me. She prays for me. She prays alongside me. She supports me. She encourages me. She will tell me, Arthur, that's not a good idea. She'll say, Arthur, that was so great. Her faithfulness is such an example to me. I'm so grateful. I mean, where would I be if God had not sent her to me? I started praying that God would give me a wife, and about a week and a half later, she showed up. It doesn't work for everybody. I'm just telling you. But it worked for me. And I'm so grateful. I mean, I think about holding my first child, Josh, holding him in my hands. Because we were at the hospital and my wife Lori had some terrible things happen to her during the delivery. And they thought she was going to die during delivery. And so they got Josh out. And I mean, no kidding, they handed me my son and said, hold him, we've got to rescue your wife. And I'm like, yee, scared to death there for about 10 minutes. And I'm so grateful to God that he took care of my wife, and he took care of my son. And I look at my children, and they were little, and now they're adults, and I see that they're godly and that they're growing in their relationship with the Lord, and they seek to worship him, and they want to minister to other people, and they're serving other people, and they're generous. And I say, God, thank you. You did all of that. I just got the front row seat and got to watch you shape them. But what about you? How about those times when you're sitting there and you're discouraged, and you read this Bible verse, and you've read it 38 other times, you go, oh, wow, God, that was for me right then. How about those times when you were praying for something for your kids and you thought there's no way God will do that, and God did? What about the time that your marriage was on the brink and you said, no, God, will you rescue us? And he did. What about the time that you went to camp and you didn't even want to be at camp? You're like, man, I'm just here to meet the girls, man. That's why I'm here. And Wednesday night, Thursday night, you're like, Jesus. And your life got transformed. And everything became different in just a moment. Right? Remember God's past faithfulness. He's always good in the present, but you understand his faithfulness more looking at it in the past. Second thing, trust your future to God. Trust your future to God. When my wife's mom was 59 years old, one morning she got up and she brushed her teeth. She turned the water off, put her toothbrush down, stood there for a second, turned the water back on, picked her toothbrush up, brushed her teeth again. Turned the water off, put the toothbrush down, stood there for a minute, turned the water on, picked the toothbrush up, brushed her teeth again. Her husband goes, that's not usual behavior. Nothing else was really going on. It was something unusual. He said, well, you should probably take her to the doctor. That's kind of unusual. She didn't remember that she had brushed her teeth 3 times. So went to the doctor. The doctor says, well, I think everything's okay, but let's take her to the hospital and just get them to run a couple tests this afternoon. So go over there this afternoon. They run a couple tests. She's okay. But let's keep her here overnight and observe her just in case. So, okay, we're going to run a couple more tests as well. So we go up to see her that night at the hospital. Everything's all hunky-dory. Everything's great. We're laughing, having a good time. The next morning, we get a phone call, hey, y'all need to get up to the hospital. So we get up to the hospital, and they say, hey, here's what's going on. And she's got a stage 4 brain tumor, and it's about to burst, like not 2 or 3 months from now, like maybe 20 minutes from now. It's just, and they said, we don't know exactly when, but we need to do something about it quickly. And so, man, we closed the door and we started praying and calling down fire from heaven and doing everything that we knew to do. Like, Lord God Almighty, would you intervene? Would you heal her? Would you do something? And the people in that room prayed like I have never heard them pray, and like I've never heard them pray since. I mean, we got after it. If you can get after it, we got after it. And, you know, and the little small town where we lived, thought, you know, we probably need to find a better hospital. No offense, but, you know, maybe we see what we can do. So we made a couple phone calls, and we feel like God opened a couple doors for us. So we end up 3 or 4 days later, we're at Duke Hospital, which is one of the most preeminent hospitals in the country. One of their specialties is brain cancer. The surgeon who did the surgery on Mike Krzyzewski's wife, he's the coach of Duke basketball, was the surgeon that did the surgery on my mother-in-law. And so we thought, man, this is great. And man, we're calling everybody, we're praying, we're sending out notes and text and whatever we can come up with. Just pray. And people were. I mean, she was a godly woman, and people loved her to death. And I mean, people were rallying around and praying for her, and had the surgery, and she came out of surgery, but she never got any better. She got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. About 4 months later, she died. But we still trusted our future to God because we knew where she was going. We knew that she had a personal relationship with God through Jesus. We knew that. And we said, we don't understand it, and to be honest, still don't. But God's plans are better than our plans. And so we said, God, here it is. You got it. We're not going to try and fix this. You know, and there's not a week at our house that we don't talk about her. She had a huge impact on me. And I tell you that to say, what you want to happen might not happen. You say, oh, it's going to be okay. It will be okay. It might not be okay this afternoon or next week or a month from now. But if you're a believer, you're going to get in heaven, and it's going to be okay. It might not be okay before then. It might get better. It might get a whole lot better. It might not. But we trust the future. He's been faithful in the past. He's faithful in the present. We know he's going to be faithful in the future. David says this. He says, hear my prayer, O Lord. Let my cry come to you. Do not hide your face from me in the day of my distress. Incline your ear to me. Answer me speedily in the day when I call. You ever done that? Have you ever said, God, I need this today? God, you don't understand deadlines. Here's the deadline. Here's what you need to know. I think you've messed this up. I think you're late. I think probably most of us have done that. He says, because of my loud groaning, my bones cling to my flesh. I lie awake. I am like a lonely sparrow on the housetop. All the day, my enemies taunt me. Those who deride me use my name for a curse. You know what David's doing? He's pointing out his heart. He says, for I eat ashes like bread. That's less than delicious. And mingle tears with my drink. He says, but you, O Lord. Those 4 words. Some of you today who are watching online, you're sitting at home. It's a nice day. You're outside. You're sitting on the porch. You're at the kitchen table. It's Tuesday night, and you're watching this, and you're sitting around in front of the Christmas tree. These 4 words, but you, O Lord. You're right here with me in this room right now. But you, O Lord. You need to have a but you, O Lord moment. You got the worry. You got the concern. You got the stress. You got the anxiety. You got the... And you need to say, but you, O Lord. I got all that Because grammar, what's really important is not what comes before the but what comes after the but. But you, O Lord, God can handle it. Pour out your heart to him. Don't be a man. Don't be full of pride and say, I got this, I can handle it, I don't need his help. But you, O Lord, you are enthroned forever. You are remembered throughout all generations. For the Lord builds up Zion. He appears in his glory. And so you remember his faithfulness and you trust the future to him. And it's going to be a little bit hard, honestly. Honestly, it's going to be a little bit hard. Things are going great for you. You're going to try to say, hey, look at all the good things I've done. It's not going to feel painful to you. But if your things are kind of bland for you, it may feel a little painful to you. If things are not going well for you, it feels very painful for you. But here's how it works. We push through the pain and we start praising him. Yes, God, this hurts. I need you. I can't live without you. I'm going to trust you. You make your pain basically an offering. And you say, God, here it is. This hurts. But instead of trying to fix it ourselves, like, God, here it is. Quit pleading and start praising. Push through the pain and start praising. It becomes like a sacrifice, like an offering. In Lamentations 2, it says, pour out your heart like water before the presence of the Lord. Paul writes this in Philippians 2. He says, even if I'm to be poured out as a drink offering upon the sacrificial offering of your faith, I am glad and rejoice with you all. And then David says this, for God alone, O my soul, wait in silence. Because you know why? Nobody else can fix it. For my hope is from him. He only is my rock, and he only is my salvation. He only is my fortress. I will not be shaken. On God rests my salvation and my glory. My mighty rock, my refuge is God. Now, most of the time, the reason that we don't want to worship him, the reason we don't want to pour our heart out to him is because we think we can handle this ourselves and we're afraid. I understand being afraid. I get that. I've been afraid 2, 3, maybe 4 million times in my life. When I was a little boy, my favorite uncle was named Jack, Uncle Jack. And I loved going to Uncle Jack's house because he was a fireman and he was a brick mason, and he had a 1956 original paint Chevrolet with about 850 miles on it. He had a restored Model A. He had a restored Model T. He collected carriages. He had the presidential carriage from Ulysses S. Grant was one of the carriages that he had. So he had this huge barn full of all these things that he had collected. He had horses. He didn't have cats. He had dogs. He had ducks. He had guinea. He had chickens. He had all these things. And so for a little boy, there's a lot of cool stuff to hang out there. He had tractors. I could go there. I could shoot my BB gun anywhere I wanted to on his property. And so I loved going to my Uncle Jack's. And so I would go there when I was a little boy, and he would hand me about half of a cup of corn, the kind of corn that you feed horses with. And he'd say, here, take this corn and go over and feed the ducks. And so I would do that. I would take my little cup and I would walk over there, open the fence and go out there, and there's ducks around the pond, and you know how the drill goes, and you throw the corn out and the ducks come up and eat up the corn. I thought, well, it was a great thing. But there was one duck had a psychological problem. I mean, it was like a boy eating duck. You understand what I'm saying? And so he would kind of realize that I was out there, and then he would get mad that I was like, hey, dude, you don't belong here. It's ducks only. What are you doing out here? And he'd come out and go, quack, 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 quack. I'm like, a little boy. So I'm like, what are you doing? And he's, kind of do like that. I mean, it scared me to death. And so I left and went back inside, and my Uncle Jack was in the workshop, and I said, he said, what are you doing back? I said, I wanted to come in here. He said, well, you're supposed to feed the ducks. Yeah. And he looked down at my cup. He said, you still got some corn in your cup. Why didn't you feed all the corn to the ducks? And I was like, I don't want to say this. I'm afraid of a duck. You're afraid of a duck? Yes, sir. Why are you afraid of a duck? Because he's mean. Is it that big duck? Yes, sir, it's that big duck. He said, well, come on. He said, I'm going to show you how to never be afraid of a duck again. I said, okay. I was still nervous because that duck had about eaten my leg off. And, so we're walking around the barn and going back over there to the pond. And I keep looking over my shoulder because he's like, go on now, go on. And I keep looking over my shoulder to make sure he's going with me. Right? And we get there and we open the gate. He said, go on in, go on in. And so we get in there and he said, all right, now feed those ducks. And then, sure enough, took a minute, that big old duck comes over, whack, 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 whack. And I start backing up a little bit. And he goes, whoa, whoa, And that duck got closer and closer to me. He said, kick the duck. Genius. And I kind of look back over him like, what? Kick the duck. And so, little boy kind of kicked like that. So I kicked the duck. He goes, yeah! The duck takes off. See, that duck scared me. But as long as my uncle was with me, I was okay. I said, I don't want to go do this by myself. The reason he came with me is because I told him, this is what scares me. He said, I can fix that. You'll never be afraid of a duck again. Y'all come here, I'll go with you. And then he tells me to do something, and I do it. Guess what? I've never been afraid of a duck again the rest of my life. Now, I'm not suggesting that we go around and start kicking animals. Except cats. You knew I was going to say that. But no, seriously, we're not kicking animals. That's a bad idea, okay? We're not kicking animals or anybody else. It's a bad idea. No, but look, here's the thing. Listen, will you tell your Heavenly Father, will you pour out your heart to Him? I am afraid. I am worried. I am scared. I am angry. I am overwhelmed. I can't do this. I don't think I can handle this much longer. He knows it already. Just tell Him. Because if you would tell Him, He loves it. Because you're creating intimacy between you and Him. And what's He going to do? He's going to walk right alongside you. He's going to say, I got this. It's not what you're going to do, but what He is going to do through you. So you never be, whatever your duck is, you never be afraid of that duck again. You can go kick the duck and say, I'm done with it. But you got to pour out your heart to Him first. You say, God, I need you. I can't do this without you. Does that make sense?